COVID-19 or the novel coronavirus is what a lot of people are talking about these days, whether it's those who've been directly impacted by the virus to those who are receiving bailout packages, helping us get through those trying times right now. To talk more about it is our legislative reporter, Tyler Dawson, who's also the Alberta correspondent with the National Post. Tyler, let's start off by talking about some of those aid packages from both the Kenney and Trudeau governments. What will they really look like?
Yeah, that's right. So there's an awful lot of stuff that's going on here. And as you mentioned, both the federal government and the province are getting in on this. So Wednesday afternoon, the Kenney government announced basically sort of these one-time payments for Albertans who are unable to work. I think it's about $527. And the idea behind those payments is to sort of tide people over to when the federal government's payments start coming. Now, the federal government's payments are, shall we say, considerably more complicated. They are more targeted in terms of people who've lost jobs. They are being dispersed through existing programs such as employment insurance, such as child benefit credits. It's almost impossible to rattle them all off. It's a really, really robust and lengthy set of measures that are coming in, and the Kenney government basically saying on their end that there's not a lot that they feel like they can do right now in terms of pulling economic levers. So what they're trying to do is, put in place some safety nets as best they can to try and get people through what are very likely to be some challenging times for the next several weeks, several months, perhaps.
My daughter works as a line cook in Hamilton, Ontario, and she lost her job recently as well when the restaurant shut down, so she's looking forward to receiving some of those federal dollars. Now, Tyler, in battling COVID-19, the province has backed down from some changes on physician billing. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so this was part of sort of the long telegraphed plans to try and reduce physician spending, to try and sort of bring it down in line per capita with what other parts of the country were doing. This is part of the whole McKinnon report sort of stuff the Kenney government was doing that has, like just about everything else, been blindsided a little bit by this outbreak. But the basic gist of it is doctors at the moment can bill about $18 and some cents per 15 minutes with patients. What the government wanted to do was take that 15-minute number up to 25 or something like that before doctors could start billing for overtime. The government has backed down on this. The doctors' associations and stuff have said, look, this is a bad idea. It's going to lead to 10-minute medicine, things like that. And what Tyler Shandro, the health minister, said was, respectfully, we disagree with that assessment of these changes, but given everything that's going on, we'll just leave it as it is for now, and these are things that they'll come back to once the waters are a little less choppy.
How does the COVID-19 crisis really affect non-essential surgeries in our province?
Yeah, so that was one of the big developments this week that I wouldn't say came out of nowhere, but came shortly after a declaration of a public health emergency, that there were going to be suspensions of all non-essential and elective surgeries. Now, there are some exceptions to that. For example, oncology will continue, cesarean sections will continue, but if you're waiting for, I don't know, elbow surgery or something, maybe probably not going to get in. Now, the important thing to keep in mind on that is that Alberta Health Services is going to be phoning people who had these surgeries scheduled to let them know. They're asking people to please don't phone us. They are, as we've heard all week on the news, totally swamped with people inundating the 811 line with concerns about COVID-19. But yes, elective non-essential surgery is going to be just set aside for now in preparation for what's coming. And that sort of leads me to another point that's worth mentioning is that the measures that we've seen sort of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday we aren't going to know the effect of them for about 2 weeks down the line. And that's because of sort of the incubation period for COVID-19, the 14-day isolation. So, the cases we're seeing now are really the result of what happened weeks past. So we're sort of, Dr. Theresa Tam, the federal chief medical officer, said, we're trying to look to where the puck is going. And so I think that very much explains what public health officials are trying to do right now.
Many cities across Canada have declared a state of emergency, including right here in Lethbridge and on the Blood Reserve. Tyler, the Blackfoot Confederacy has also closed some facilities.
Yeah, that's right. So what we're seeing across the province, really, in all sorts of communities, cities, reserve everywhere really, is we are seeing closures of many sort of services. So schools, for example, are not explicitly closed. Teachers are still going in, but students are not attending classes. That's the case in post-secondary. That's the case in K to 12. Daycares, kids are not supposed to be going, things like that. Gyms, for example, are being shut down, whether that's your local recreation facility that the municipality runs, or whether that's your super fancy private facility. So all kinds of things being shut down this week because of the outbreak.
Yeah, my gym as well, the Corvan Ray YMCA here in Lethbridge, which is, it really
Yeah, mine
breaks my
just
heart.
closed.
Yeah,
Such is life. Guess got to start running again, I suppose.
that's right. Yeah, lots of long walks after dinner. Now, oil
Yeah.
keeps plummeting and is now under $25 a barrel. Tyler, the UCP government was banking on around 58 bucks a barrel for this budget. Does this mean we could potentially see more cuts?
That is a great question. It's been interesting because in the last couple weeks, what Jason Kenney and Finance Minister Travis Taves and others have been saying is Alberta's in a precarious position and we need to be cautious of this. And if things go totally sideways, there could be further spending restraint. So that was very much the hint that they were giving, was that there were going to be more cuts. Now, I think over the course of this week, when we look at what the Kenney government's announced in terms of bailout, not bailout packages, that's not quite the right term, in terms of funding for individuals affected by COVID-19, in terms of delaying some of the cuts and things like that they were planning on making, it's I would say a little bit hard to square that circle. What they were saying a week ago seems to not be exactly the thing they're saying now, which isn't necessarily a good or bad thing either way. But this budget is done, so depending what happens down the road, we'll see another budget, no doubt. But that has become a weirdly hard question to answer, just because you're seeing quite a bit of spending, quite a bit of restraint, when that did not seem to be what they were telegraphing mere days ago.
What's interesting is that oil being, like I said, below $25 a barrel, many people are saying, well, the economy's in the tank. The only nice thing is at the pumps. I mean, in Lethbridge here, it's around 82 cents. Edmonton, I've seen it as low as 68 cents a liter, right?
Yeah, I've seen the gas station by my place is 72, 74 cents, something like that. So, maybe it's time for an after dinner drive like we used to do when we were kids. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, the budget passed recently, as we mentioned, but the opposition NDP was not very happy with Jason Kenney's UCP party. Why now?
Yeah, so it sort of was, I wouldn't say pushed through. The opposition would probably say rammed through on sort of Tuesday night into Wednesday. The government says that gives a sense of stability. So on Wednesday, when Jason Kenney was announcing his sort of aid package, saying these are the greatest challenges Alberta will have faced since the 1930s, which is quite a bit when you consider that the NEP was the 1970s and 80s. He said that this budget being passed, getting it through, provides a sense of stability. People know what funding is going to look like, what program spending is going to be like. Um, so that, I think, is sort of the idea behind getting it through. Now, of course, the opposition was saying when the budget was first released that the projections for oil prices and unemployment numbers were overly optimistic. It certainly would look like they were right about that. Oil, as you mentioned, down below 25 bucks a barrel. Unemployment, I don't guess we don't really have sort of live unemployment numbers, but I suspect in the next quarterly update we're going to see those have jumped. So, but the budget's passed, it's implemented. I, I don't know what else to say really. People, this is one of those things that people are mad about at the legislature, and are maybe making political hay out of. But for everyone else, I think they're probably paying far more attention to what Jason Kenney announced Wednesday in terms of an aid package than they are about the bickering that happened in the legislature 24 hours previous.
With everything that has transpired in regards to COVID-19, oil tanking, the markets tanking, Tyler, we may be looking at not just an Alberta recession, but maybe a Canada-wide and global recession.
Yeah, that's right. There have been some projections, both really, from some of the large banks saying that that's what we are looking at. And in Alberta specifically, there was a commentary paper earlier this week saying that we are probably headed towards a recession. Now, of course, we never really finished climbing out of the last one. But yeah, looking at unemployment numbers spiking, incomes going down, and of course government revenues going down too because of the decrease in oil prices. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, Jason Kenney saying Wednesday that this could be the most challenging time for Alberta since the 1930s. And as we mentioned sort of off the top of the show, we also have on Wednesday announcements from the federal government some $83 billion meant to float the economy through this time. And Finance Minister Bill Morneau talking a little bit specifically about oil and gas being especially hard hit. So we are certainly not looking forward to a especially rosy economic future right now. But as the governments in Alberta sort of keep saying that we don't have a great idea how long this is going to go on for, so it's sort of hard to predict what the economic consequences could be. But we're also, CNRL, Canadian National Natural Resources, cutting some of its spending. But we're also talking about mom and pop shops, about little restaurants and things like that that are going to be affected by this too. So it's, this isn't just, oh no, oil prices are down, we might see layoffs in the oil patch. This is also, oh no, I can't go out for a drink. What is the pub around the corner going to do for revenue? So it's certainly a very precarious and risky time economically.
What's really interesting too is one of my friends is a radio announcer, Medicine Hat, and they've actually set up a remote line so we can broadcast right from his home, which is kind of cool, right? Be self-isolated at the same time. But I'm thinking to myself, in TV news, no, we can't do that. There's a green screen, there's camera gear, there's lighting. I mean, it's not quite as easy. I guess for you, maybe you can write from home, right?
Yeah, I can be self-isolated as best I can. My dog is sitting on the couch while I work all day long, so it's all right. But and it not even just. I've been thinking a lot about healthcare workers are getting a lot of attention right now for having to go to work, and grocery store clerks. But I mean, you got tradespeople, you got plumbers, you've got construction people, you've got police, and man, I think when people put their mind to thinking about it, there's an awful lot of jobs out there that
And
can't be
mechanics too. I
relocated
mean,
to.
at the same time, if you have to get your
Yeah.
car fixed, repaired, right?
Yeah, there's thankfully a lot of these jobs maybe you're not sort of cheek to jowl with someone and you can maintain your 2 meters distance like the government says, but yikes, and especially for the people whose kids are now off school.
Now, many government facilities have closed because of COVID-19, and the government is no longer doing scrums before question period, but people are still in the house.
People are still the politicians are still going to work, bless them. Yeah, so far the government is still attending, still arguing with each other. They've got that separation between the sides of the parties in the legislature, so at least that's something. And government workers mostly going to work still at this point. This has been a little small point of I wouldn't say small, that's not quite fair. This has been a point of contention this week in some quarters where people are saying, businesses are sending their folks home to work in isolation. Why are government workers still going in? And it sounds like the government is in discussions with the civil service in Alberta to try and work around that. But asked about it on Tuesday, Kenny and Dr. Dina Hinshaw, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, I believe is her full title, were saying that, government offers some essential services and we need to make sure that things are still up and running at this point. So that I suspect we'll see developments on that in coming days.
And ironically, our Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, herself was tested for COVID-19, but fortunately came back negative. Yeah.
Thankfully, yeah.
Our legislative reporter and Alberta correspondent with the National Post, Tyler Dawson, thanks for joining me today from Edmonton.
My pleasure, Hal.